to talk about 5 mindset traps that come up in cornhole and otherwise. And just know that some of these are happening, or most of these are happening before you actually get out on the boards. Like a lot of this stuff, when we talk about mindset and things, it's not just about what shows up in that moment with that bag or with that round or with that miss, or even right before when you're nervous about, oh, I have to play this person. This kind of work needs to happen before all of that. It actually helps to avoid some of that happens, or at least minimize or make it less intense. I had somebody comment yesterday, I get nervous like right before I walk up to the boards and I have to go play somebody, especially if they're really good. And we can pull out the Mark Richards quote, right? Like play the game, not the name situation, but it still can be nerve-wracking. So the things that we're going to talk about will help to minimize that experience for you. And some of that comes with, especially, I know this person specifically and hasn't been playing that long competitively. So a lot of it is in your mechanics. And I just want to be really clear that the things we're covering this week for this mindset training is aside from mechanics. So this is assuming you have mechanics down, because I'm no mechanics expert. But if you have mechanics down, and especially like if you're playing a certain way at home and then it's not happening when you actually go out and play on the boards, like it's not a mechanics issue, right? It's a mindset thing. So that's what we're going to talk about. So if you're a note taker, you want to write down these traps, grab your pen and paper. We're going to dive into them now. The first mindset trap that we have, whether we're playing cornhole or not, but especially shows up in cornhole, is believing our thoughts. It is very tricky because there are thoughts. They're the thoughts that come up in our own brain, and we start to wonder, like, how could this not be true? It's my thought. But we are programmed, patterned beings. And the really kind of scary thing, at least scary when I first learned it, is that most of our programming, especially at the deep subconscious level, happened from the age of 0 to 7. So if you think back about what your life was like from the age of 0 to 7, the things you were hearing, the things you were watching. In my training in neuro-linguistic programming, they call that time, or they call children walking unconscious minds. Like it's just wide open, no critical factor. Whereas once you get older, if somebody says something, there's like this critical factor that comes in and is like, is that true? I don't know. That seems a little off. But prior to the age of 7, there really isn't that ability to do that. You just sort of take information in. And so if we are in experiences where that information happening around us, or just what we're watching, because a lot of times, as a parent, I know it's easy to say things like don't do this or do that, but it's really hard to live it sometimes. You're like, do as I say, not as I do. That doesn't work. And so from a very young age, we're watching and we're modeling and we're basically creating this pattern and program that we now have as an adult. And so these thoughts that come into our brain as we're developing and as we're playing and all these things, I mean, they might not even be your thoughts. A lot of times they're not your thoughts. A lot of times you can go, wow, that's not something I truly think. I think that's like something my mom or my dad or my teacher thinks. And so the first mindset trap is to always believe those thoughts, because we need to remind ourselves and question them and say, is this really true? A couple things I like to really help my clients look at is this true for everybody? So this comes up a lot with weight. For example, they'll say like, oh, after the age of 50, you gain weight. I'm like, well, is that true for everybody? Does every single person over the age of 50 gain weight? No. Okay, well then maybe it's not true. And then the second question I like to look at is this really true for me? So for example, with that same one, if you're 45 and you're like, everybody after 50 is going to gain weight and you're not even 50 yet, then you're just like predetermining something off of a pattern of someone else, maybe people in your family. I know it's hard not to believe it, but is it really true for you? And I will even push that a little bit farther. Like, how do you know you're gaining weight and not, holding on to water or bloating? Like, you can really go deeper into it. But for cornhole, where this is going to really show up is believing the thoughts like, I can't beat this person, or I'm not good enough, or I need more practice, Or, I mean, these thoughts could be true, but they could not be true. But if we just believe everything that comes into our head at all the time, then we really don't have any ability to have any other option. Um, when we have problems or struggles or missed shots, the tendency is to automatically go to, I just need to practice more. I just need to, make my mechanics better. And like I said, if you are someone who has the mechanics down in your backyard, and you consider yourself to be an advanced player, then this is not what needs to happen. Not that you shouldn't continue to practice, you should, but that's not the thing that you need to pull apart and look at deeper. We have to look at what's going on other than the mechanics. So a lot of time when these thoughts come in, we just follow them. Like, oh, yep, that's what needs to happen. That's what I need to do. We don't really question them. So the first mindset trap is to believe our thoughts, and I want you to start to question your thoughts. I want you to follow them. Like, is that really true? Can I really prove that? Is that true for all people? Do I know 100% is that true for me? So start to question them more. All right, the second trap that we fall into for mindset is making meaning out of emotions. Now, this is the one I see the most with cornhole players. Okay, it is normal to be mad when you miss a bag. It is normal to be nervous when you walk up to a big game. It is normal to feel fearful or anxious when there's a lot of pressure. It's all these feelings that you have are normal. And I got into kind of an argument almost with Bernie when we were commentating at Worlds, because it was during the qualifiers, and I said, even though these people didn't make it, look how far they came. Like, they should be so proud of themselves. And he said, okay, that's not how it works. Nobody that got all the way to the end and didn't make it is feeling that way. And I said, hold on a second. I'm not saying that you didn't have the feelings of frustration, of anger, of defeat, of disappointment. You should have those feelings. You will have those feelings. You will have those feelings before games, during games, after games. That you cannot control emotions. They are always gonna be there. But the main distinction that I want you to start to make is not making meaning out of that emotion. So let's say you feel defeated. Okay, you can feel defeated. That does not mean that you are defeated. Those are two different things. It doesn't mean that you suck. It doesn't mean that you're a failure. It doesn't mean that you're not meant to be a pro. It doesn't mean that you're not good at cornhole. It's the meaning that gets tricky. So if you're in the middle of a game, you miss a shot. You're mad. Oh, God, I can't believe I missed that shot. I'm so mad at myself. The key is when you feel that anger because you missed a bag, do not create meaning out of it in that moment. Like, and sometimes your brain will be like, man, I feel mad. And this means. Now, if you start to notice that language, cut it off right there. It doesn't mean anything except that you feel disappointed or frustrated or mad that you missed a bag, which you should feel. So another thing you can tell yourself when those emotions come up is, that's normal. I should feel angry that I missed a bag. I wanted it to go in the hole. I've been practicing for months. Like, I care about this game. Like, of course I'm mad. But that doesn't mean anything, and it specifically doesn't mean anything about you as a person. Like, I missed a bag. That doesn't mean I suck. It doesn't mean I'm awful. It doesn't mean my partner's mad at me. It doesn't mean I'm going to lose this game. It doesn't mean that now all this practice is worth nothing. Like, this is where we get into trouble. So don't make meaning out of emotions. Emotions are normal. Don't stifle them. Don't suppress them. Let them be there. Man, I'm feeling angry. That's normal. I should feel angry. Move on. Let the emotion play out, move on. So let the emotion be there. Don't make meaning out of it. Super, super important. This is probably the biggest trap I see watching cornhole players, especially pros. They expect to make every single bag in the hole. And that's not a bad expectation. I don't think that's technically dangerous as it stands. I think it's good to feel confident in yourself and your abilities and the work you've put in. I think that's great. But if you expect to make every bag and then you miss a bag and you feel the normal anger and then you make that mean something, is when you're going to get into a spiral that will make you miss the next bag and the next bag. So do not make meaning out of your emotions. Okay, I feel like I really drilled that in. So the third mindset trap you're going to come into is this mindless living. This is a tricky one because Mindless living is 100% not just about what's happening on the court. Let's talk a little bit about this idea of being in the zone. For those of you who are live with me here, if you've ever experienced this in the zone, I'm curious to know what you would define that as. Like, if you're willing to comment. Like, what does it feel like to be in the zone if you've been there? It could be in other sports as well, or other activities. Like, I've been that way in guitar before, where time just passes and you just don't really even notice. But like, what does it mean to be in the zone? If you're willing to comment, I'd love to know. Because my sort of understanding of this in the zone thing is it's a maximum presence. It's maximum. Like, you're so present with the bags and the board that you don't even notice what's happening right next to you. It's what people would describe as tunnel vision. You're just like focused in, and nothing else is really happening. You don't really even notice the crowd, nothing. You're just in the absolute present moment. The reason why being in the zone is so productive is because you're so freaking present, and you operate at your highest level when you're present. Unaware of surroundings and focused on the whole. Exactly, Christian. That's exactly what it is. So think about it. If that's the zone, and and I'm sure you guys have experienced, if you've been in the zone, it usually doesn't happen every single time, right? And I know when you've probably experienced it, you're like, man, I wish I could just be there all the time. When I play cornhole, I feel like that's when I play my best. I'm assuming, and you can correct me if I'm wrong. So if you're thinking to yourself, man, if I could just get in the zone every time I play, like, I'd be freaking unstoppable. Like, that would be amazing. Then what you're saying is, if I could be fully present every time I play, then I would be super successful. So it comes all the way back to this idea of living mindfully and with ultimate presence. And if you want to be someone who does that, it needs to happen way before you step onto the court. It becomes natural, as to where normally you have to focus and usually end up choking because of it. Exactly. Good point, Chris. So how do we become more present? How do we become more mindful, or how do we avoid mindlessness? There's so many different times we can practice this. Obviously, with my background of being, a food and weight coach, I really love to help people eat mindfully. It has massive benefits. Aside from just becoming more mindful, it allows you to eat the amount of food your body's hungry for, stop overeating, stop binge eating, and really get more out of your food, better digestion. There's like 1,000 benefits of eating mindfully. So it's one of the ways that I help my clients become more mindful in general. So if that's something that you're interested in, try it. Try just every time you eat to get rid of distractions, to focus on your breath, even close your eyes, taste every part of your food, use it as a tool to experience that in the zone. I know it sounds silly because you're eating, but it's not that hard to get present with food, because food's awesome, let's be honest. So like, if you could do it there, and you can start to pull this into other areas of your life, it's going to be easier. Obviously, when you're practicing, you're going to have, obviously, gameplay, you're hanging out with friends, you're throwing bags, and you need that. Please keep doing that. But also add in some mindful practice techniques where your whole goal is not necessarily making the shots. I mean, obviously that is the ultimate goal, but like, for that practice session, it's how present can I stay? So noticing what pulls your attention away from the game, what pulls you out of that space where you're just you and the hole in the board. Like, have intentional practice sessions where you're really, really mindful, and then practice mindfulness in these other areas, whether it's with food. I love, with my clients, I have them practice mindful movements, whether they actually take like a yoga class, which is my favorite, or whatever movements you're doing, bringing mindfulness to it, like feeling the muscles you're using, which is another way you could bring it into your cornhole practice. I feel, the muscles in my arm as I'm releasing the bag. I feel the muscles in my legs as I, lift off or push or step. Like, get so grounded into your body, and which is what presence is. It's being in the body, not in the head. So get so in your body. Remember, if you're good at cornhole, you got mechanics down, the body already knows what to do. The brain's only going to get in the way. So the more you tap into the body and get out of your brain, and energetically, it's an actual grounding down. Physically, energetically getting out of the buzziness of your head and getting into your feet. Feel your feet on the ground. The more you can connect down, ground down, think about, oh, I can feel my breath right now. I can hear the air conditioning vent. I can feel the fabric in my hand. How present can you get? This is where you're going to see your game change. And the more you practice that, the easier it's going to be to replicate it in these high pressure situations. All right. Mindset trap number 4 is going to be kind of piggybacking off of, actually the next 2 are going to piggyback off that one. And that's going to be focusing on doing only. We are human beings. Human beings, meaning the keyword being we need to be, but we tend to really focus on the doing. So we are we live in a culture and a society that says achievement and doing and production is everything. And so it's really difficult not to attach all your value and everything to that, to how much you do, to how much you can get done. So I invite you to exercise the idea that maybe it's just as important to practice techniques and mechanics for cornhole and the doing stuff as it is the being stuff. Going back to the last mindset trap of being more present and more mindful, that's the being. And so this could look like just spending some time, and you'll see this a lot in other sports where you'll have coaches tell their athletes, you need to vision yourself getting that last shot, or you need to vision yourself winning with the trophy or whatever it is. Like, you have to play these things out in your mind. This is not it's kind of a doing thing because you are visioning, but it's a being kind of activity. Meditation is a being kind of activity. So these are activities that maybe aren't as obvious as helping you achieve the goal, because it's not like I'm practicing my air miles, which is like straight up doing mechanical thing. It's very easy for the brain to understand why you would spend 2 hours doing that a day. It's very easy for the brain to give you kudos and approval for doing it, as well as culturally telling people I practice air miles for 2 hours today. Like, you would get a lot of accolades back for doing that. If you start doing more of these, or the opposite, if you start being more, like being the winner, being the cornhole pro, what does being that elite player look and feel like? If you start practicing those things and you told someone, like, they're like, how much did you practice today? You're like, well, I practiced for 1 hour mechanics, and then I spent 3 hours, being the pro cornhole player I want to be. They look at like you were absolutely insane. Hey, Josh. So I get it. It sounds crazy, but I'm telling you, if you want to be elite, you better freaking know how to be elite. You better know what that feels like. You better know what that experience is like. Your brain better understand what that looks and feels like. Because if it doesn't happen in your brain first, it's going to be very difficult to believe it can happen in reality. So you have to believe it within yourself. You have to feel it within yourself. You have to have patterns and programs of these things happening, because the brain does not know the difference between reality and dreaming. So, and the way that dreams are most effective is when you can feel it, when you feel the emotions. So drop into, who am I when I'm this whatever cornhole player you want to be? What does that person do? How does that person show up? Really drop into it and become that person. They say, dress for the job you want, not the job you have. Fake it till you make it. It's those kinds of ideas, but like really, really strategic, because you're envisioning and feeling into these so that these things come into fruition, and so that your brain has those patterns already in there, and that it's not this new thing that you have to come up with. So focus on being as much as doing. It's kind of like, I remember when I first became a personal trainer, and I just couldn't even understand why anybody would spend a significant amount of time stretching. Like, okay, look, if I have 2 hours a day in the gym, I'm freaking hitting the weights hard for 2 hours, or the cardio. Like, I am not going to spend 30 minutes to an hour stretching. Like, what a waste of time. Like, that's how I used to think, until you get injured. Until you overtrain, and then you're like, well, you know what? I bet that stretching was pretty important. Yeah. So think of it as the balance to all the doing is the being, and you need to do both. All right, last one is, the last mindset trap is efforting our way out of everything. And this comes to when things don't go your way. The way you're most likely patterned and programmed to think is, if something didn't go your way, whether you missed a shot, you lost a game, whatever it is, the natural tendency is to go, I need to do more. I'm not doing enough. I need to practice more. I need more hours on the field. And for a lot of us, we have other stuff going on, and that's not possible, which leads you where, right? Like, okay, cool. If that's what you're identifying as the problem, that you're not efforting enough, and you don't have any more time or energy to effort, then what the heck do? You just throw your hands up, like, well, guess I am never gonna get to the level I want to get to because I can't, whatever. Like, no, it doesn't work. The truth is that there might be some mechanical things that you need to work on, but I guarantee that you don't need 6 hours a day to do it. And I would even love to do an experiment where we compared, groups of people that threw bags 6 hours a day versus groups of people that threw 1 hour a day, but they did all these other things that I'm talking about, because I think you'd be shocked at the results. So it's not always about efforting more. If you have really focused, strategic, intentional practice that's fully mindful and present, you're going to get a lot of effectiveness out of that practice. So what do you do then when your efforting is not working and you're not getting the results you want and your brain's automatically saying, I need to effort more? You do the opposite. Now, I'll give you an example of this. This is when it comes to my weight loss clients. They tell me, I'm not losing weight, so I need to do more. I need to exercise more. I need to diet more, whatever. And I tell them that's absolutely untrue. Whether or not you need to change the way you're eating or exercising, we don't even know yet, because that's like 6 steps ahead of where we are. Before we can even know whether or not that needs to happen, we have to drop into our bodies and figure out what the heck is going on here. And that takes non-doing. That takes breathing. That takes a time out. That's like a check-in, like, all right, body, what the heck is going on? Like, I need to just kind of have a conversation with you. I need to figure out where we're at. I need to figure out where our head's at, where our mindset's at. Like, it's instead of making that knee-jerk reaction of like, this is what I have to do. I just got to practice more. That's the problem. I'm not efforting enough. That's the way we're programmed or wired to think. And I'm asking you to do the opposite. I'm asking you to do less. So you have a really bad game, you have a really bad match, you have a really bad day, okay? The last thing I want you to do is hit the court for hours the next day. I want you to do the total opposite. I want you to sit there with yourself, process the emotions, feel the feelings, strip the meaning, don't follow the thoughts, get present, and figure out what the heck is going on here, because it may be mechanical, it may not be mechanical, but we don't even know if you just jump to conclusions and go straight into action, straight into doing, straight into efforting more. So take a breath, check in with yourself, ground down, ask yourself what's going on, write it out. Man, I'm so pissed I missed. I'm better than that. This sucks. I should never play cornhole again. Like, get all that stuff out on paper so it's out of your head so that you can actually think and problem solve clearly, which is going to work way better than you trying to problem solve from that place. Another way of saying it is, if you're like in a fearful, angry spot, that is not the decision-making area of the brain. And, I'm not going to get too much into neuroscience, but there's different parts of the brain that are activated depending on where you're at mentally. And if you want creative, effective problem solving, you cannot be in that state and access that part of your brain. You have to exit that area and drop into the other part of your brain that actually can do that for you. So mindfulness, meditation, grounding, presence, these are the kinds of areas that once you access them, you'll actually get helpful and solution-based responses that are very creative and efficient and probably take less of your time than you think you would need. So those are my 5 mindset traps. I hope that's helpful. Tomorrow, we are going to cover, how to create a daily practice. So yesterday I talked about goal setting. Today we talked about mindset traps. Tomorrow we're going to talk about how we kind of put this together to create some kind of simple 15-minute thing that you do each day that's super productive, super efficient, super effective, that you would add into your routine just like you would shooting air mails or whatever you do to improve your cornhole game. And we're going to talk about how you do that so that you have that and you're doing something. Now, obviously, more than 15 minutes is always better, but let's try just to do that and see where we get, right? That's step 1. So I was going to do that on TikTok, but it looks like TikTok's not going to let me do lives because I just started my account a few days ago. So we'll meet back here on Instagram and Facebook for tomorrow and talk about that. So for all of you who came live, thank you. And for all of you watching the replay, please feel free to put your comments. I'll still read them. and I will see you guys all tomorrow.